Henry Lee Bates, and our Way to a Wonderful Life message for today is titled Liberty Without Limitations. Liberty Without Limitations. I'm going to begin this message with some words from the great American mystic Ernest Holmes. He writes, "We are always specializing the law of cause and effect for some purpose. Mostly we are doing this unconsciously. Now we must learn to bring our thoughts and purposes into line with the original harmony. In doing this, we should not be afraid that we are usurping the divine will any more than a farmer would be afraid that he is going contrary to the laws of nature or the will of God when he decides to plant corn instead of cotton. The necessity of choosing is ordained by the very nature of our being, and we cannot escape it. We are at liberty to choose what manner of life we shall live. We should feel that in this choice, we are backed by all the will, all the purpose, and all the law in the universe. Our reliance is on this law and order. It is the creative agency of all life, and at the same time, our use of it is personal and individual. Here is all the freedom one could ask for and all the freedom that the infinite Spirit itself could possibly have given us. The freedom to act as an individual, the freedom to give full rein to our creative imagination, the freedom to do this, at least temporarily, in such a way as to produce discord instead of harmony, and more important, the freedom to produce harmony instead of discord. If we couple this with the idea that no one can harm another without ultimately hurting himself, that good alone can finally win. We shall see that when an individual's consciousness is in tune with the infinite, they no longer ask, does God wish me to be happy or whole, or does the law of good desire me to have this thing which I desire? They merely ask, can I conceive of this as being done? Am I certain that my desire is in line with good? If it is, nothing is against me and everything is for me. That was taken from the book, How to Use the Science of Mind, by the American mystic Ernest Holmes. Each and every one of us have an opportunity every day to realize what it is that's going on in our lives. And as long as we're honest with ourselves, we can change those things which we seek to change. It's the absolute truth. That's the liberty that our Creator has given to each and every one of us. We can read in the ancient wisdom of the Holy Bible that as you sow, so shall you reap. And these words are synonymous with the definition of cause and effect and karma. The Mastermind Jesus, however, took this law of cause and effect and the Hindu and Buddhist law of karma to a deeper, more profound level of consciousness. He said, it is done unto you as you believe. In other words, it is not just what we do or say, but what we believe about ourselves and what we believe about others and what we believe just about everything that scores a karmic hit either for or against us. Our way, then, is to rid our consciousness of negative beliefs. If we know someone is a crook, let them be a crook to the world that in our mind holds them as consciousness expressing at the level of which they presently exist in their own mind. For it is their consciousness, not ours, that is expressing the crooked path, so we can leave them right where they are and hold nothing in our mind as negative against them. This is not always easy to do, but we can lessen the negativity in our mind by not dwelling on the negative qualities of people, and definitely by not speaking out loud the word crook. If we burn our finger on a hot stove, we don't think of the stove as evil or hateful. We know the stove is doing what a stove does, nothing more. I came across an article on the internet about these pastors that handle snakes. I don't know how many of you have seen that. How many of you have seen these pastors that handle the snakes? Well, so many of them get killed. There's been 91 deaths since 1919 of pastors handling snakes. But what they fail to lose sight of is that we don't have the power to dispense with the law of nature. And it's the nature of a snake to bite someone. And if a snake's nature is to bite someone, then just like the stove that burns our finger, it is only doing what it does, no more, nothing more. Now, William James wrote, the great American philosopher, the student of world religions, he wrote, "The world we see that seems so insane is a result of a belief system that is not working. To perceive the world differently, we must be willing to change our belief system. Let the past slip away, expand our sense of now, and dissolve the fear in our minds. This fear in our minds takes our liberty away. It creates limitations through worry, anxiety, and repetitive thinking of past disappointments. So as we dissolve fear in our minds and learn to resist not evil, as the Mastermind Jesus stated we should do, we shall at the same time loose the limitations that bind us to that which we seek to eliminate from our life experience." So let's look at those words from William James again. It said, "The world we see that seems so insane is the result of a belief system that is not working. To perceive the world differently, we must be willing to change our belief system, let the past slip away, expand our sense of now, and dissolve the fear in our minds." So what he's telling us is we have to loose these things from the past. We have to loose the ideas that we've learned from the world that create fear, that tell us that there's a God and something else. We go back to the words of Isaiah in the Scripture. "Besides me, there is none other." He revealed to us the Spirit, the infinite Spirit, is all there is. There's only God, one intelligence, one Spirit, one presence, one life, and we're all part of it. So besides me, there is none other. So we know that there's only good because there's only the God that creates, that does not destroy, but creates. So we are all held in mind in this infinite mind of God, as we have learned from the ancient wisdom. In Him, in the Spirit, in the mind, we live and move and have our being. And so we are subject to the collective consciousness, or race mind, as some will refer to it. Nonetheless, this being subject does not make us a victim, but instead gives us a strengthened faith in the good. Why? Because we know, as William James points out, the world we see that seems so insane is not of our making, and we have the liberty to change our own personal belief system. This is what the Mastermind Jesus realized when he said, "Be in the world, but not of the world." We are of the one infinite Spirit, intelligence, and power, and we can't lose sight of that. So let's go back to those words of the great American mystic Ernest Holmes from his book, How to Use the Science of Mind. As we are always specializing, that means personalizing, specifically to ourselves, the law of cause and effect for some purpose. Mostly we are doing this unconsciously. Now we must learn to bring our thoughts and purposes into line with the original harmony. In doing this, we should not be afraid that we are usurping the divine will any more than a farmer would be afraid that he is going contrary to the laws of nature or the will of God when he decides to plant corn instead of cotton. The necessity of choosing is ordained by the very nature of our being, and we cannot escape it. We cannot escape it. We are at liberty to choose what manner of life we shall live. We should feel that in this choice we are backed by all the will, all the purpose, and all the law in the universe. Our reliance is on this law and order. It is the creative agency of all life, and at the same time, our use of it is personal and individual. It's personal to us. We are like a wave to the ocean. That wave that we are is like a connection to God. We're always connected to God. As long as there is life, and our life is eternal because we are created in the image of God, the likeness of God, which is the nature of God. So we're always connected. Just as the wave is connected to the ocean, if the wave didn't have the ocean, the wave would not exist. Just as we're connected to the life that is God, if that life was disconnected, we would not be alive. There's no disconnect in our nature. We are the nature of God. So our reliance is on this law and order. It is the creative agency of all life, and at the same time, our use of it is personal and individual. So we could say the infinite, which is God, which is the Holy Spirit, manifest as God, through us, as us, and for us. We could say that we are infinitely individualizations of the one. Infinite individualizations of the one. So Dr. Holmes tells us here is all the freedom one could ask for and all the freedom that the infinite spirit itself could possibly have given us. The freedom to act as an individual. The freedom to give full rein to our creative imagination. The freedom to do this, at least temporarily, in such a way as to produce discord instead of harmony. And more important, the freedom to produce harmony instead of discord. Now let's go back to those words from William James, where he tells us how we react to the world in which we live. He says, the world we see that seems so insane is a result of a belief system that is not working. To perceive the world differently, we must be willing to change our belief system. Let the past slip away, expand our sense of now, and dissolve the fear in our mind. So let's go back to the wonderful Ernest Holmes. The freedom to act as an individual. That's what gives us the power to change our individual life, even though we are subject to this collective consciousness or race mind, or the thoughts and beliefs of the world in which we live. The freedom to act as an individual, the freedom to give full rein to our creative imagination, the freedom to do this, at least temporarily, in such a way as to produce the discord instead of harmony, and more important, the freedom to produce harmony instead of discord. So if we couple this with the idea that no one can harm another without ultimately hurting themselves, that good alone can finally win. We shall see that when an individual's consciousness is in tune with the infinite, they no longer ask, does God wish me to be happy or whole? We know that. Or does the law of good desire me to have the thing which I desire? They need merely ask, can I conceive of this thing as being done? Or can I conceive of this thing as being mine? Am I certain that my desire is in line with the good and takes nothing away from anyone else, diminishes no one, including myself? If it is, then nothing is against me, and everything is for me, and everything is for me. So when we think about being subjected to the collective consciousness, we can lose that idea that it has any great power over us. There's only one power, and that's the power of Spirit. That's the power of God, and that's the power of good. So we are all held in mind, as we have learned from the ancient wisdom, in the Spirit. In the mind of God, we live and move and have our being. And so we are subject to the collective consciousness, the race mind, as some will refer to it, but nonetheless, this being subject does not make us a victim, but instead gives us a strengthened faith in the good. Why? Because we know, as William James points out, the world we see that seems so insane is not of our making, and we have the liberty to change our own personal belief system. This is what the Mastermind Jesus realized when he said, be in the world, but not of the world. We are of the one infinite Spirit, intelligence, and power. We are of the one infinite spirit, intelligence, and power. So if we know this and we understand this, and we start taking it into our mind that this is the truth about us, then all manner of things make a lot more sense to us. Think of those words from that affirmation that the great Dr. Robert Bitzer used to have taped to his podium for 40-some years. 40-some years he had this taped to his podium. And every once in a while he would use it and speak it to the audience so that the audience could take these powerful words into their own minds. And these are the words. There is a power within you that can lift your life to its highest level. It can change illness into health. It can bring peace amidst turmoil. It can bring success out of failure and victory out of defeat. It can bring companionship and happiness out of loneliness. It responds to you. For this is the power that dwells within you. Think about those words. Say, there is a power within me. Say it to yourself. There is a power within me that can lift my life, personalize it to yourself, to its highest level. If I have an illness, it can change it into health. If I'm feeling a sense of anxiety or turmoil, it can bring peace and harmony into my life. If I think about the failures and disappointments in my past, it can overcome those and bring success into my life. If I'm feeling lonely and unloved, it can bring companionship and happiness into your life. We must believe this is so and take it into our mind and say that it's so. Or it always comes back to, it is done unto you as you believe. Remember, the Mastermind Jesus said this. He expanded on that idea of Hinduism and Buddhism about karma. He expanded on that idea from the Apostle Paul, when the Apostle Paul said, whatever you sow, so shall you reap. Jesus went beyond them. Whatever you believe, it is done unto you as you believe. So whatever you believe about yourself, whatever you believe about others, whatever you believe about the world in which you live, the circumstances that you're confronted with, the situations that you find yourself in, whatever you believe, it is done unto you as you believe. So we must look out into our world and say, I believe in prosperity and happiness and health and harmony and joy and peace and love. I believe in all these things. I believe that I have the power to draw these things into my life experience every day. And I let myself believe this as the truth for me now and for all the days forward in my life. So we want to bring into our mind, bring it into our mind every day. So think about these words from the New World Encyclopedia. It reads, William James was not interested in studying religious institutions or doctrines. He focused instead on the feelings, the acts, and experiences of individual people in their solitude, so far as they apprehended themselves to stand in relation to whatever they may consider the divine. For example, James compared two different types of religion according to the feelings and emotions they instilled in people. The religion of healthy-mindedness versus the sick soul. Healthy-minded religious people like Mary Baker Eddy and Walt Whitman hold firmly to their belief in the goodness of life, while the sick souls like Leo Tolstoy and St. Augustine constantly feel the dark dread of evil invading their lives. Those are powerful words. Mary Baker Eddy and Walt Whitman aren't the only healthy-minded religious people. Well, we know that. And we know that Leo Tolstoy and St. Augustine weren't the only ones that fall into the sick soul religions that feel the dark dread of evil invading their lives. But there are so many people out there that have a greater faith in the evil than they do in the good. so many people out there that want to take the happiness away from other people and bring in the morbid. The other day on Facebook, I saw this graphic that showed Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. And the graphic read, "Wait until they find out about this dude that was nailed to the cross," in comparison to Rudolph being laughed at by the other reindeer. I thought, how does that make any sense? And why would you bring something morbid into something that brings delight and happiness to children? It's like, we don't need this. We got enough morbidity, enough nonsense, enough insanity in this world in which we live without bringing stuff like that into play in the world. And we shall always have the liberty to choose to either join the sick souls or maintain a firm belief in the goodness of life. So let's choose the wonderful life. Let's choose the wonderful life every day in all circumstances that we find ourselves in. And in this consciousness, we can have liberty without limitation. We can have liberty without limitation. I want to go over these words once again from the American mystic Ernest Holmes from his book, How to Use the Science of Mind. It says we are always specializing, personalizing, specializing the law of cause and effect for some purpose. Mostly we are doing this unconsciously. Now we must learn to bring our thoughts and purposes into line with the original harmony. In doing this, we should not be afraid that we are usurping the divine will any more than a farmer would be afraid that he is going contrary to the laws of nature or the will of God when he decides to plant corn instead of cotton. The necessity of choosing is ordained by the very nature of our being, and we cannot escape it. We are at liberty to choose what manner of life we shall live. We should feel that in this choice we are backed by all the will, all the purpose, and all the law in the universe. And our reliance is on this law and order, because law and order is the laws of God made manifest. It is the creative agency of all life, and at the same time our use of it is personal and individual. Here is all the freedom one could ask for and all the freedom that the infinite Spirit itself could possibly have given us. The freedom to act as an individual, the freedom to give full rein to our creative imagination, the freedom to do this, at least temporarily, in such a way as to produce discord instead of harmony, and more importantly, the freedom to produce harmony instead of discord. If we couple this with the idea that no one can harm another without ultimately hurting himself, that good alone can finally win. We shall see that when an individual's consciousness is in tune with the infinite, they need no longer ask, does God wish me to be happy or whole? Or does the law of good desire me to have this thing which I desire? They merely need to ask, can I conceive of this thing as being done? Am I certain that my desire is in line with the good? And if it is, nothing is against me and everything is for me. Nothing is against me and everything is for me. So let's go back to those words from William James. All this great wisdom is worth taking into our minds. A great benefit to us. Great benefit to us. The world we see that seems so insane is a result of a belief system that is not working. This is from William James. To perceive the world differently, we must be willing to change our belief system, let the past slip away, expand our sense of now, and dissolve the fear in our minds. We must let it go. We must let it go. We know that we are all held in mind, as we have learned from the ancient wisdom, in the Spirit. In the mind of God, we live and move and have our being. In the life of God, we live and move and have our being. And so we are subject to the collective consciousness because we're all in it, or the race mind, as some people refer to it. Nonetheless, This being subject does not make us a victim, but instead gives us a strength and faith in the good. And why is that? Because we know, as William James points out, the world we see that seems so insane is not of our making, and we have the liberty to change our own personal belief system. This is what the mastermind Jesus realized when he said, "Be in the world, but not of the world. We are of the one infinite spirit, intelligence and power." We shall always have the liberty to choose to either join the sick souls or maintain a firm belief in the goodness of life. Let's choose the wonderful life every day in every way in all circumstances that we may find ourselves in. And in this consciousness, we can have liberty without limitations. And so it is. Amen. So it is. Amen. Once again, I want to thank you for being with me today.